The massive Imperial flagship, Dawn Sovereign, hung in the darkness of space, its sleek black hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Inside the command center, High Commander Tay stood with his hands clasped behind his back, studying the holographic projection of Earth that rotated slowly before him. His tall, slender form cast long shadows across the polished floor as officers moved quietly around him, no one daring to disturb his concentration. "Such a beautiful world," Tay murmured, reaching out to zoom in on the swirling weather patterns of the North Atlantic. And so very unaware, Officer Sung approached cautiously, data tablet in hand. "Sir, our preliminary scans confirm earlier reports. The planet possesses abundant water, diverse mineral resources, and a remarkably stable atmosphere. Their technology is primitive by our standards. Internal combustion engines, limited space exploration, rudimentary artificial intelligence." Tay nodded thoughtfully. "Perfect for standard conquest protocols, then. No need for specialized approaches." "There is one curious note, sir," Officer Sung added, swiping through her data. "Their communication systems are more robust than expected for their development stage. They seem particularly fond of broadcasting signals into space." "Are they aware of us?" Tay asked sharply. "No evidence suggests so, Commander. They appear to be simply curious about the universe." Tay smiled thinly. "Curiosity is a trait we can exploit. Dispatch the assessment team. I want detailed reports on their defense systems, government structures, and societal pressure points. The Emperor expects this operation to proceed without complications." "Yes, Commander. Team will deploy within the hour." As the assessment ships detached from the Dawn Sovereign, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them invisible to Earth's detection systems, Tay returned to studying the planet. The Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, but something about this blue marble sparked his interest. Perhaps it was the way its inhabitants seemed so confident despite their isolation in the cosmos. That confidence would soon be tested. On Earth at the Mountain Sky Observatory in Colorado, Dr. Juri Park rubbed her tired eyes and stared at her computer screen in disbelief. The anomalous readings near Jupiter had appeared again, the third night in a row. According to her calculations, these weren't natural phenomena. The pattern was too regular, too precise. "Hey, you still at it?" Dr. Raj appeared in her doorway, coffee mug in hand. "It's almost midnight." "Look at this," Juri said, pointing to her screen. "That's not instrument error or cosmic background radiation. That's a signal." Raj leaned closer, frowning. "Could be a lot of things. Maybe one of our probes malfunctioning." For 3 consecutive nights, in the exact same pattern, with movement. "That defies orbital mechanics." Juri shook her head firmly. "Something's out there, Raj. Something that doesn't want to be seen but occasionally slips up." Raj sighed, patting her shoulder. "You know how this sounds, right? The board already thinks you're too quick to jump to extraordinary conclusions. Remember the pulsar incident last year? That was different," Juri protested. "And I was partially right about the timing anomalies." "Partially right doesn't cut it in our field. Look, take the night off. If it's still there tomorrow, we'll run it through the new filtering algorithms. Deal?" Juri nodded reluctantly, but as Raj left, she downloaded the data to her personal device. Something inside her, the same intuition that had helped her discover a previously unknown exoplanet 2 years ago, told her this was important, too important to wait. In her small apartment later that night, surrounded by star charts and reference books, Juri compared the signals to every known cosmic phenomenon. Nothing matched. When she ran the pattern through a basic decryption program she'd developed as a side project, certain regularities emerged that suggested artificial origin. "This is communication," she whispered to herself, heart racing. Not random noise, not natural at all. The next morning, she presented her findings to the observatory director, Dr. Kim, who listened politely before shaking his head. "Dr. Park, while I appreciate your thoroughness, we can't reallocate telescope time based on such tenuous evidence. The international team is scheduled for their supernova research all week." "But sir," Juri insisted, "if I'm right about this..." "If..." "You're right. Whatever it is will still be there after the scheduled research concludes, Dr. Kim said firmly. Science is patient, Dr. Park. You should be too. As she left his office, frustration burning in her chest, Juri didn't know that high above Earth, Imperial assessment vessels were deploying atmospheric probes designed to analyze Earth's defensive capabilities. She didn't know that Commander Tay had already designated Earth as Acquisition Target 2187 in reports to the Imperial capital. She didn't know that the vanguard of an invasion force was silently taking position behind Earth's moon, hidden from all detection systems, but she suspected something. And in the coming days, that suspicion would prove to be humanity's first warning of the storm approaching from the stars, a warning that most would ignore until it was almost too late. The Imperial science vessel, Silent Observer, maintained a perfect geosynchronous orbit above New York City, completely invisible to Earth's radar systems. Inside the ship's main laboratory, Chief Scientist Jun stood surrounded by floating holographic displays, showing brain scans from thousands of unwitting humans below. Commander, you need to see this, Jun called, excitement evident in his voice. Despite his usual calm demeanor, Commander Tay entered the laboratory, his tall form casting long shadows across the gleaming floor. Report. It's their neurological patterns, Jun explained, expanding one of the brain scans. We've observed something remarkable. Their neural plasticity is off the charts, adapting and forming new connections at rates we've only seen in 3 other species across the galaxy. Tay frowned, studying the colorful images. Meaning? Meaning they learn differently. Where most species specialize, humans generalize. They're problem solvers in a way that's unusual. They create solutions no algorithm would predict. Jun swiped through several more scans. And there's more. Their emotional responses create distinct wave patterns that somehow enhance cognitive function rather than hindering it. Is this a threat assessment? Tay asked sharply. Jun shook his head. Not directly, their technology remains primitive, but their potential, it's worth noting. Note it then, Tay said dismissively. But remember our mission. The Emperor wants this system secured within the standard time frame. These humans may be interesting specimens, but they're still just another acquisition. As Tay left, Jun returned to his scans, focusing on a particular pattern that appeared consistently across human subjects. According to Imperial records, only the now extinct Solari had shown similar characteristics, right before their unexpected rebellion 3 centuries ago. 3 days later, disaster struck, a power fluctuation, later attributed to a solar flare interacting with the Imperial cloaking technology, caused a momentary failure in the stealth systems of the entire fleet. For exactly 7.2 seconds, every Imperial ship became visible to Earth's observation systems. On the ground, chaos erupted. News stations worldwide broke into regular programming with emergency alerts. Social media exploded with grainy images and videos of the massive spacecraft suddenly appearing in Earth's skies. Stock markets plummeted. Religious leaders proclaimed the end times. Military forces worldwide went to high alert. In the White House Situation Room, President Lee stared at satellite footage of the alien vessels, now invisible again, but whose position could be inferred from atmospheric disturbances. "What are our options?" she asked her assembled military advisors. General Park grimaced. "Limited, Madam President. If their technology allows them to appear and disappear at will, our conventional weapons may be useless. We don't even know if our nuclear deterrent would be effective. We've been monitoring all communications channels," the National Security Advisor added. "So far, they've made no attempt to contact us." "So we wait?" the President asked incredulously. Before anyone could respond, screens throughout the room suddenly flickered and changed, showing the image of a humanoid figure with striking silver eyes and bluish skin. "People of Earth," the figure spoke in perfect English, "I am Ambassador Day of the Galactic Imperial Alliance. We apologize for the alarm caused by our unintended revelation. We had planned a more gradual introduction." President Lee straightened her jacket and faced the screen. "This is President Lee of the United States. To whom am I speaking, and what are your intentions toward our planet?" Ambassador Day smiled, an expression clearly practiced but not quite natural. We come with peaceful intentions, President Lee. Our empire spans thousands of worlds, all prospering under our guidance. We've watched your civilization struggle with poverty, disease, climate change, and conflict. We can help you overcome these challenges. The offer seemed too good to be true, and it was. Over the next 48 hours, as Ambassador Day addressed the hastily convened United Nations Security Council, the true nature of the imperial assistance became clear. In exchange for technological advancement beyond your imagining, we require only reasonable access to your planet's resources, Day explained smoothly to the assembled world leaders. And, of course, a limited population management program to ensure sustainability. The term population management sent a chill through the chamber. When pressed, Ambassador Day clarified with the same pleasant smile, a reduction of approximately 40% of your current population conducted humanely over a 5-year transition period. The chamber erupted in outrage, but it quickly became apparent that Earth had few alternatives. When the representative from Brazil suggested refusal, Ambassador Day simply nodded understandingly. Of course, refusal is your right. However, I should mention that our standard protocols for uncooperative acquisitions typically result in 70–80% population reduction through conventional military means. We much prefer the cooperative approach. Back aboard the Dawn Sovereign, Commander Tay watched the proceedings with satisfaction. They're fracturing just as predicted, he noted to his second-in-command. The more technological nations are already calculating the benefits they might gain. The less developed nations recognize they'll bear the brunt of the management program. Should we prepare the pacification units, sir? Tay shook his head. Not yet. Let fear do our work for us. When humans are afraid, they make poor decisions. By this time tomorrow, half their nations will be ready to surrender just to gain advantage over the other half. What Tay didn't know was that across Earth, not everyone was willing to accept the imperial ultimatum. In underground facilities and hidden bunkers, military and scientific minds were already working on countermeasures. And in a remote observatory, Dr. Juri Park was recording unusual energy fluctuations from the alien vessels, fluctuations that suggested their seemingly invincible technology might have unexpected vulnerabilities. The United Nations headquarters buzzed with tense voices as world leaders argued about the imperial ultimatum. Some nations, mostly those with advanced technology and military power, pushed for negotiation, believing they could outsmart the aliens or at least secure better terms. Others advocated for immediate resistance, regardless of the consequences. We cannot sacrifice 40% of the world's population, insisted the representative from Kenya, pounding his fist on the table. That's over 3 billion people. And what's your alternative? Responded the French delegate coldly. Losing 80% in a war we cannot win? Sometimes survival requires difficult choices. As the debate raged, President Lee of the United States sat silently, watching the fractures deepen between nations. The Imperials had given Earth 72 hours to provide an answer. They were now halfway through that deadline with no consensus in sight. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in the frozen wilderness of northern Siberia, a local reindeer herder named Alexei peered through binoculars at a column of smoke rising from behind a distant ridge. Whatever had crashed there had carved a trench nearly a kilometer long through the permafrost. Within hours, Russian military helicopters swarmed the area, establishing a perimeter around the crash site. Initial reports described the wreckage as definitely not of Earth origin, but also different in design from the Imperial vessels. Dr. Juri Park was asleep in her small apartment when her phone rang. The call came from Dr. Kim, the observatory director, who had dismissed her concerns just days earlier. "I need you on a plane to Russia immediately," he said without preamble, his voice tight with stress. "The government is assembling a scientific team. Your signal analysis from Jupiter matches frequencies being emitted by a crashed alien ship in Siberia, one that doesn't appear to be Imperial." 12 hours later, dressed in a thermal protection suit, Juri stood at the edge of the smoking crash site. The ship was smaller than the Imperial vessels, with smooth lines that reminded her of a manta ray. Its hull shimmered with an iridescent blue-green that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. The Russian team tried cutting into it, explained Colonel Wei, her military escort. Laser cutters, diamond drills, nothing works. But about an hour ago, a section just opened, like it was waiting for something, or someone. Jewry felt a strange pulling sensation, almost like a physical tug urging her toward the ship. Has anyone gone inside? Wei shook his head. Not yet. Radiation readings are normal, but there's an energy signature we can't identify. We were waiting for your team. I need to go in, Jewry said suddenly, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Absolutely not, Wei objected. Protocol requires— Something's in there, Jewry interrupted. Something important. I can feel it. Before Wei could— Stop her. Jewry approached the open section of the hull. The pulling sensation intensified, and she heard, or perhaps felt, a faint humming that seemed to resonate with her heartbeat. The entrance adjusted its size as she approached, confirming her suspicion that the ship had indeed been waiting for her. Inside, the ship's interior was dimly lit with a soft blue glow. The air smelled like ozone after a thunderstorm. The corridor curved gently, leading her to what appeared to be the cockpit. There, slumped in what must have been the pilot's seat, was a figure, not human, but remarkably close. Tall and slender, with elongated fingers and a slightly larger cranium. Its skin had a faint bluish tinge, but not the metallic blue of the Imperials. The being's eyes opened as Jewry approached, revealing irises that shifted color like oil on water. You heard my call, the alien whispered in perfect Korean, though its lips didn't move. Good. There's little time. Who are you? Jewry asked, kneeling beside the clearly injured being. We are the Watchers, came the reply directly, into her mind now. We have guided humanity from the shadows for millennia, protected you, hidden you. Hidden us from what? From them. The Empire. The being winced, a silvery fluid seeping from a wound in its side. They have found you despite our efforts. My ship was damaged trying to reach Earth before them, to warn you. The alien reached out, its long fingers gently touching Jewry's temple. Words are too slow, see what I have seen. Suddenly, Jewry's mind exploded with visions. Planets being systematically stripped of resources, entire species relocated to work camps, civilizations with far more advanced technology than Earth's falling before the Imperial war machine. She saw worlds turn to barren wastelands, their populations decimated not by quick violence, but by the slow death of exploitation. Why? She gasped when the visions subsided. Why do they do this? Empire, the Watcher replied simply. Always expanding, always consuming. Its breathing became more labored. But you, humans, you are different, special. How? Our technology is nothing compared to theirs. The Watcher's lips curved in what might have been a smile. Not technology, your minds, your spirits, your, what you might call souls. Something in your neurological structure. Something we recognized long ago. Something they fear, though they don't know it yet. More images flooded Jewry's mind. Ancient Watchers observing early humans, subtly guiding human development while keeping Earth hidden from galactic star charts, manipulating cosmic signals to make the solar system appear uninhabitable to casual Imperial scans. Why tell me this? Jewry asked, tears streaming down her face from the emotional impact of the shared memories. Because now they have found you, protection is no longer possible. Only resistance remains. The Watcher's breathing grew ragged. In my ship's database, the formula. Your brain patterns amplified disrupt their technology. A weakness they do not know exists. The alien's grip on her temple tightened. Do not surrender. You are more than you know. More than they know. Humanity must not become another conquered species. You are the last hope against an empire that has consumed 1,000 galaxies. With those words, the Watcher transferred a final burst of information. Technical specifications, frequency patterns, mathematical formulas that Jewry somehow understood, despite their complexity. Then the alien's hand fell away, its color fading to ashen gray. As the Watcher's life ebbed away, Jewry sat back on her heels, mind reeling from what she'd learned. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. According to the Watcher, they were fighting for the entire galaxy. Outside, Colonel Wei and his team waited anxiously. When Ju-Ri finally emerged, her eyes held a new determination. "Get me secure communications," she told Wei. "I need to speak with President Li immediately. And find me the best neurologists and communications engineers on the planet." She looked back at the ship one last time. "We have less than 36 hours to save the world." The underground bunker beneath Seoul hummed with activity as scientists, engineers and military personnel worked frantically around the clock. Dr. Ju-Ri Park stood at the central holographic display, explaining the Watcher's knowledge to the assembled team for what felt like the 100th time. "The formula is complex but clear," she said, pointing to the neural frequency patterns projected in the air. "Human brainwaves, specifically those produced during states of intense emotion, create patterns that interfere with Imperial technology. Here it's like finding the exact musical note that shatters a crystal glass." Colonel Han, a stocky man with sharp eyes who had been assigned to lead the military side of the operation, looked skeptical. "And you got this information from a dying alien? One that just happened to crash land right when we needed help?" "I know how it sounds," Ju-Ri admitted, "but the math works. Dr. Nishimura's team in Tokyo has already verified the basic principles. The Imperials use quantum entanglement for their communications and power systems, and somehow our neural patterns create disruption fields in the quantum realm. Even if this works," Han countered, "how do we broadcast human brainwaves with enough power to affect their ships? We're talking about vessels the size of cities." Dr. Li from the Seoul National University stepped forward. "That's where my team comes in. We've been analyzing the samples from the Watcher's ship. Their transmission technology is adaptable to our satellite networks. With modifications, we can use our existing communications infrastructure to amplify and broadcast the disruptive frequencies." Han remained unconvinced. "And we have less than 24 hours to implement this globally." President Li's face appeared on the main screen, joining the conversation from Washington. "You have the full cooperation of every nation on Earth, Colonel. For the first time in human history, we are truly united. Research teams across the planet are working on different aspects of the plan. The Chinese are retrofitting their satellite network. The Europeans are handling the power requirements. India and Brazil are coordinating the ground stations." Han straightened his shoulders. "Yes, Madam President. There's one more thing," Ju-Ri added. "According to the data from the Watcher, different emotional states produce different disruption effects. Fear creates one pattern, but it's temporary, and affects only communications. Anger disrupts weapon systems but burns out quickly. But there's another pattern, produced by something the Watcher called collective empathic resonance." "In human terms?" Han asked. "Unity, hope, collective purpose. When humans align their intentions, it creates a sustained pattern that disrupts their entire technology base at once." Ju-Ri took a deep breath. "We need volunteers to serve as broadcast sources, people whose brainwaves will be amplified and transmitted, and they need to maintain very specific emotional states during transmission." Within hours, the plan took shape. Around the world, modified EEG labs were set up, with volunteers connected to advanced neural interfaces. Satellite dishes were hastily retrofitted with components based on the Watcher's technology. Power grids were rerouted to provide the massive energy needed for the global broadcast. As the deadline approached, Ambassador Day announced a formal ceremony in New York where world leaders would sign the cooperation agreement with the Empire. Commander Tay himself would attend to oversee Earth's peaceful transition to Imperial control. "It's perfect," Ju-Ri told Colonel Han as they watched the announcement. "All their leadership in one place, overconfident and unprepared." "If this fails," Han said quietly, "it's not just the end of the mission, it's the end of everything." Ju-Ri nodded. "I know, but the Watcher chose Earth for a reason. We have to believe that reason is valid." The day of the ceremony arrived. At the United Nations headquarters, Ambassador Day stood at the podium, smiling his practiced smile as cameras broadcast the event worldwide. Behind him, Commander Tay watched with barely concealed satisfaction as world leaders prepared to sign away humanity's freedom. "Today marks the beginning of a new era for Earth," Day announced. "Under Imperial guidance, you will take your rightful place among the stars." In the underground bunker, Ju-Ri and her team monitored hundreds of screens, showing volunteers connected to neural interfaces across the globe. Each was focusing on memories and emotions that generated the critical frequency patterns. Parents thinking of their children's future, friends remembering moments of connection, strangers united by hope for tomorrow. "Satellite network is ready," Dr. Lee reported. "Amplification systems at maximum." Colonel Han's hand hovered over the activation button. "On your command, Dr. Park." On the main screen, they watched as President Lee approached the signing table at the UN. She caught the eye of the camera for just a fraction of a second, their prearranged signal. "Now!" Ju-Ri shouted. Han slammed his hand down on the button. Across the planet, the modified satellite network activated, broadcasting the amplified human neural patterns at full strength. At the United Nations, Ambassador Dai was mid-sentence, when his translator device suddenly emitted a high-pitched squeal and died. Commander Tay clutched his head as his neural implants began malfunctioning. Throughout the building, Imperial technology started failing. Communication devices exploded, personal shields flickered and died, and weapon systems went offline. The effect spread rapidly. On the massive Imperial ships orbiting Earth, critical systems began shutting down as the broadcast strengthened. Crew members rushed to isolate systems manually, but the disruption spread too quickly. In orbit, the flagship, Dawn Sovereign, lost gravitational control, causing massive internal damage. As objects and crew members were suddenly affected by zero-G, emergency systems failed to activate. Power cores began shutting down to prevent catastrophic overloads. Back in the bunker, Ju-Ri watched the data feeds with growing excitement. "It's working! Their systems are failing across the board." "Maintain the broadcast," Colonel Han ordered. "Keep those emotional states steady." On screens worldwide, people witnessed the Imperial representatives at the UN collapse in disarray. Outside, their shuttlecraft fell from the sky, control systems dead. And in orbit, visible through powerful telescopes, the massive Imperial fleet began to retreat, individual vessels struggling to maintain basic functions. Commander Tay, his face contorted with pain and rage, managed to activate an emergency transport back to his ship. As the Dawn Sovereign limped away from Earth, he gazed at the blue planet with new understanding and fear. Somehow these primitives had discovered the Empire's greatest vulnerability, one that had been hidden for millennia. "Full retreat," he ordered, his voice hoarse. "All ships maximum distance from Earth broadcast range." As the Imperial fleet vanished into deep space, celebrations erupted worldwide. In the Sol bunker, Ju-Ri collapsed into a chair, exhausted but triumphant. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Colonel Han nodded grimly. "For now, but they'll be back. And next time they'll be prepared." "Then we better be prepared too," Ju-Ri replied. "The Watcher gave us more than just this weapon. There's knowledge in those files about Imperial weaknesses, about our own potential. This isn't over, it's just beginning." As night fell across Asia, teams of scientists continued working, studying the data from the successful broadcast, analyzing the Watcher's files, and preparing for the inevitable return of the Empire. Humanity had won its first battle against the Galactic Conquerors, but the war was just beginning. The Dawn Sovereign limped through space, its once pristine hull now scarred and darkened. Inside, emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as repair crews worked frantically to restore basic functions. On the bridge, Commander Tay sat motionless in his command chair, staring at nothing, the humiliation of defeat weighing heavily on his shoulders. "Commander," his second officer approached cautiously, "we've established contact with Imperial Center. The High Council demands your immediate presence upon arrival." Tay nodded without speaking. In 3 centuries of service to the Empire, he had never failed. Now defeated by a primitive species whose technology was barely worthy of the name, he faced disgrace, possibly execution. 3 days later, the damaged flagship docked at the massive orbital station circling the Imperial homeworld, a ringed gas giant whose swirling storms had been harnessed to power the heart of an empire spanning thousands of star systems. The High Council chamber was designed to intimidate, with its towering crystalline walls and floating platforms where the 12 council members looked down upon those summoned before them. Tay stood at the center, back straight despite his shame. "Explain this failure," demanded High Councillor Rim, her voice echoing throughout the chamber. Tay recounted the events without excuse, the successful initial contact, the diplomatic approach, and then the unexpected counterattack that had crippled Imperial technology across the fleet. "Impossible," declared another councillor. "No primitive species could possibly understand the quantum principles underlying our technology, much less exploit them." "The evidence suggests outside interference," Tay responded. "Possibly the Watchers." The chamber erupted in murmurs. The Watchers were ancient enemies, thought to have been eliminated centuries ago. If the Watchers have returned and allied with these humans, the situation is graver than a mere failed acquisition, Councillor Rim said thoughtfully. "Commander Tay, you are hereby tasked with full investigation. Access to all archives is granted. Determine the true nature of this threat before we commit the main fleet." Surprised by this unexpected reprieve, Tay bowed deeply and withdrew from the chamber. The Imperial archives occupied an entire moon, data storage vaults extending kilometers beneath the surface, containing records of every world, species, and conflict in the Empire's vast history. Tay and his research team established a secure facility and began the search for any prior contact with Earth or humans. "Nothing," reported Chief Archivist Yun after 3 days of searching. "According to all standard records, Earth was unknown to the Empire before our recent survey mission." "Expand the search," Tay ordered. "Check sealed records, classified military operations, even the pre-unification archives." Days turned into weeks. Tay grew increasingly obsessed, barely sleeping as he personally reviewed thousands of historical documents. Then, buried in an obscure subsection of military research files, he found a discrepancy. A single redacted reference to a planet matching Earth's description, but dating back over 5,000 years. "The reference is coded to the Emperor's private archives," Yun explained. "Those require direct Imperial authorization." Tay's status as Special Investigator granted him unusual access, but even he hesitated before the sealed doors of the Emperor's private archives. To enter without explicit permission bordered on treason. Yet something drove him forward, a need to understand the strange resistance they had encountered on that blue world. The ancient security systems recognized his authorization. Codes, and the massive doors slid open with a whisper. Inside, holographic displays activated automatically, revealing a vast collection of the Empire's most closely guarded secrets. "Search for Earth, humans, or any variation thereof," Tay commanded the system. The archives hummed, and suddenly the room filled with three-dimensional images of Earth as it had appeared thousands of years ago. Tay watched in stunned silence as the records unfolded before him. Not just observations, but detailed accounts of Imperial genetic engineering projects conducted on early hominids. Project Genesis, the emotionless archival voice narrated. Imperial military initiative to create adaptable combat units for deployment in diverse planetary conditions. Base species selected for physical endurance, cognitive flexibility, and reproductive efficiency. The holographic display showed Imperial scientists altering primitive human DNA, enhancing certain attributes, strength, intelligence, aggression, while carefully maintaining a humanoid appearance that could blend into various environments. "The perfect infiltrators and shock troops," Tay murmured, understanding dawning. They were creating weapons. But as the records continued, Tay saw where the project had gone wrong. The engineered humans had developed in unexpected ways. Their enhanced intelligence had led to complex social structures. Their aggressive tendencies had been balanced by something the Imperial scientists couldn't understand: empathy, compassion, self-sacrifice for others. Subject populations displaying aberrant behavior, the archive continued. Units forming independent social bonds beyond command structures, refusing termination orders for damaged units, questioning command objectives. The final report was damning. Project Genesis deemed failure. Recommend termination of all experimental subjects and sterilization of planet surface. But the recommendation had been overruled. Instead, a different decision had been made: quarantine. Earth had been hidden from Imperial star charts, its coordinates erased from navigational databases, and the entire project buried in the deepest archives. The engineered humans had been left to develop on their own, their true origins forgotten even by themselves. But why, Tay wondered aloud, why not simply destroy them if they were deemed failures? The answer came in the form of a final sealed file, a personal journal entry from Emperor Jin-Ho himself, who had ruled during the Genesis Project era. With trembling hands, Tay opened the file. A holographic recording appeared, the ancient emperor looking troubled as he recorded his thoughts. "Today I ordered the Genesis Project closed, and all records sealed by imperial decree. What we created on that distant world cannot be controlled. They are something new, something we did not intend." The Emperor's image flickered as he continued. The final test subject, designation Jin, was brought to the Imperial flagship for combat evaluation. When ordered to terminate wounded comrades, he refused. When we attempted to discipline him, he escaped containment. What followed defies explanation. The recording shifted to security footage, showing a single human male, ordinary-looking except for his eyes, which showed an unnerving intelligence and determination. Tay watched in horror as this single human systematically moved through the massive dreadnought, outsmarting security systems, improvising weapons from common objects, and somehow predicting Imperial tactics before they happened. One being, the Emperor's voice continued over the footage, one engineered human, neutralized a crew of 500 of our best soldiers, not through superior strength or technology, but through something we cannot quantify: creativity, adaptability, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. The footage ended with the human commandeering an escape pod after sabotaging the dreadnought's main reactor. "We created them to be perfect weapons," the Emperor concluded solemnly. "And they are, but not weapons we can control. Today I issue this decree. Earth and its inhabitants are to be permanently quarantined, their existence erased from all but the highest security archives. Let them develop in isolation, let them forget their origins, and let us pray they never find their way to the stars." The final words of the decree appeared, glowing in the air before Tay. "Leave them be. What we created can destroy us all." Tay stood motionless, the full implications washing over him. Humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were imperial creations, weapons designed for war, but evolved into something unpredictable and potentially more dangerous than the Empire had ever encountered. As he left the archives, Tay knew what he must report to the High Council. Earth could not be conquered through conventional means. The humans' unexpected resistance wasn't luck or outside help. It was their inheritance, encoded in their very DNA by Imperial scientists. Millennia ago, the Empire had created its own worst nightmare and then forgotten about it. Until now,